Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to week 3 of our wellbeing chats. Today, we are talking about a topic that is a little bit different, but we are so excited to bring this to you and to unpack this further. And that is the rise of micro healing. Now, if you're thinking, is micro healing like a snack size portion of healing? Then, yes, my friends, you are on the right track. And this episode is all about the smallest shifts that make the biggest changes. So, let's chat about it. Pre, welcome. Thank you for being here. It's always so nice to collaborate alongside you.
Thank
So, what
you.
can you tell us today about micro healing?
Okay, I love the topic. It's very interesting. And okay, so you see, healing doesn't always happen in big dramatic ways. Sometimes it's not the retreat or the therapy, breakthrough or the deep conversations. Sometimes it's just the little things. The breath you take when you're anxious, the pause before reacting, the gentle hand you place on your heart. These all are, ways that you could be micro healing yourself. The tiny moments, the quiet choices, the subtle shifts in that begin to, soften the edges of the pain, the trauma, the grief, the loss, or any stress. Micro healing is the practice of nurturing yourself through small, intentional acts. It's not about fixing everything, but honoring where you are and offering yourself, tiny pieces of care, of whether it's self care or, yeah, care. It could be 2 minutes of stillness in the morning or a short walk without your phone. Even placing a post-it with a loving reminder on your mirror or on your refrigerator. So healing in micro moments is still healing. In fact, it's often the most sustainable kind, I think. And yeah, do you have anything to say add to that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's the small practices every day. And like you said, it doesn't have to be some big, huge miracle or some workshop
Yeah.
that you go to. These are like practical things that you can do every day
Yeah.
to, like you said, just to open up your awareness, open up that space, and just give yourself that loving kindness.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure we all have our own practices that we do, whether it's breath, whether it's meditation. Whatever works for you, whatever it is. And that's, like you said, is more sustainable. Like if you can sustain it, then it's going to work for you.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful thing we can do for ourselves.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Mel. And let's get into tiny habits and big shifts. What if I told you that brushing your hair slowly, sipping water with presence, or journaling one word a day could change your life? Tiny habits like these may feel insignificant at first, but over time they build resilience. They create space, they remind your body and mind you are safe, you are held. Consistency over intensity is another important part for me. That's, I think that's the magic of micro healing. Let's talk about the power of the tiniest habits, not the ones that require a full morning routine or, like a lifestyle overhaul. I'm talking about the quiet, simple acts you can do even on your hardest days, like sitting in silence for 1 minute before checking your phone, placing your hand on your chest when anxiety rushes in, whispering a kind word to yourself in the mirror, even if it feels awkward. And I know it feels awkward, but I think it just brings out such a huge difference. Even lighting a candle at night, not for aesthetics, but as a signal to your nervous system to, realize that, okay, it's time to wind down. These are the kind of habits that don't always look like healing from the outside, but inside something starts to shift, a softening, a rerouting. kind of feeling, a feeling of returning to yourself when you're overwhelmed. And healing can feel like too much, too far, too exhausting. So, micro healing says start where you are, use what you have. It doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be dramatic. Well, have you noticed any such actions that you've been taking in your life?
Yeah. And just the honestly the simple things that you can bring into your everyday. Like for me personally at the moment, this is about the last 2 weeks, I've been doing diving into a little bit more breath. And it's not like the breath work where we're thinking about, the heavy breathing, the hallucinations, things like that. This is just simple breathing that I can do in any moment. And what I've been using is the Ujjayi breath. So it's otherwise known as the ocean breath, and that is and it is just such a beautiful healing breath that calms the nervous system. And that's what I've been using lately. So I'll use it in the morning, as I'm getting up for my day. Like you said, it'll be the first thing that I do when I wake up is just some intentional breaths
Yeah.
before I check my phone, before I put my feet on the ground. And it's just a really nice way to set up my day. I can also use it at nighttime before I go to bed, as it is quite calming.
Hmm.
But then also, it's a really good tool to use in those moments where you can feel yourself getting worked up.
Yeah.
And I think we've all gone through those moments where we can feel that in our body. We can just feel this, like almost like this rising up. Like our nervous system is becoming like online, like we're switching online to be in that stress response. And so the Ujjayi breath or any breath work is just a really nice way to pause in the moment, just to have that little tiny pause. And I think that's really important to speak into is just this tiny micro pause. And it's like a healing pause. It's a moment that you get to decide how you're going to react. And that there is so much magic in that pause. I think we're taught that as coaches, but just in terms of any moment where you're feeling slightly overwhelmed or you're not really sure what to do or the mind starts racing, if you can gift yourself that moment of pause, that is healing in itself. Like when we stop, we give our brain a chance to catch up with what's going on. We give ourselves a chance to understand what is happening within our bodies,
Hmm.
and we just make space. And that is such a gift. Knowing in that moment with that beautiful pause, knowing that we don't have to fix everything in that moment. We don't have to know all the answers. And it just creates that pause and that ability to be able to move forward in a healthy way. If I was to put it simply, like the stillness, whether it's in breath or just the stillness in that pause, that is medicine in itself,
Yeah.
right? That is healing at its core. What are your thoughts on the pause, Pre?
I love what you said, and especially the part where we as coaches are taught to take a pause, and especially with our clients to give them that space, to hold that space for them, and just be in the moment, wait for them to respond. And yeah, I think the that's the most beautiful feeling as a coach, that I have experienced, because yeah, that's just beautiful. But I think we live in a world that celebrates hustle, that pushes
Mm,
productivity. You have to keep moving, you have to keep doing something, that praises movement, even if it's disconnected and rushed. But healing, uh, I guess healing lives in the pause, like you just mentioned,
mm,
just the pause, the tiny sacred space where nothing is demanded of you, where you're simply existing, breathing, you notice, you feel, and you know why the pause heals? Because when we pause, even for 30 seconds, we disrupt the cycle of urgency. We create a soft landing for our nervous system. We, give ourselves permission to be human, not machines. And pausing gives space for integration, for awareness, to think, for our bodies and hearts to catch up with what we are carrying. And sometimes the pause is where the truth actually reveals itself, a feeling that needs witnessing, a memory that wants to be held, a boundary that's waiting to be honored. And while we are talking about why the pause heals, let's also get into the relationship between microhealing and the body. There was a time in my life when I felt completely disconnected from my body. And I think we've had amazing conversations, you and me, Mel, about these things. And just to put some information out there, after the losses that I experienced, I carried so much grief in my chest, tension in my shoulders. And honestly, I didn't know how to be with my own body anymore. It felt like a stranger or worse. But over time, I realized something so powerful. The body isn't the source of our pain. It's the place where our pain is stored, just like trauma. And here's the most important aspect of it. It's also the place where our healing begins. Every time we choose to show up for our body, even in the tiniest ways, we are rewriting a story, our own story. And you're saying you matter, I'm here, we are in this together. You don't have to be lonely. We are all in this together. And after years of disconnection from my body, I started returning through the smallest gestures, like saying thank you to my body, even when it felt challenging. So, microhealing teaches us that the body doesn't need grand gestures, it needs consistency, kindness, attention. Even a breath can be a bridge back home. What do you feel about this, Mel?
Yes, the connection between the body and the nervous system, like holy moly, like it's something that I am so passionate about. And like you said, Pre, is that disconnect that you can get, like you said, when you were storing things, it was storing in your body, right? And so these things store over time, and people sometimes don't look at it that our body can almost be the way out of that. Our body can be the way out of grief. It can be the way out of pain. And we can use our body to heal ourselves and to heal, whether it's the emotional part of our life, the spiritual part of our life. And that all comes down to the nervous system. So I'm so glad that you have touched on this, Pre, because I mean, oh, the nervous system. This is like the juicy stuff,
Yeah.
right? It's like opening up a whole nother way of healing, and it's healing through our body. Because the nervous system, I mean, it soaks up everything, right? So it soaks up our thoughts, it soaks up our emotions, it soaks up, like you said, that it can be that feeling that we get of you're holding on to something, you're feeling it in your shoulders or your hands are clenched, and our body soaks up those signals, and it turns on the fight and flight response when we're in those moments, right? And so our body's holding on thinking that we're not safe. And so if we can do things each day that can help us to regulate. So we're talking about, the nervous system when we're talking about micro healing, we can micro regulate our nervous system all day long to come back to that place from fight and flight down to homeostasis
Mhm.
and bring ourselves into that energy of healing. Because as we know, when our nervous system is in fight and flight and we're stressed, we can't heal.
Yeah.
We can't think straight. We can't digest our food or anything like that. So, what we really aim to do is to bring our system back down into homeostasis where we can, regulate our bodies and bring our hormones down to the level where they can actually supply our bodies with the things that we need. We can supply brain with the oxygen that it needs to be able to think clearly and to be calm and to operate in that calm way.
Yeah.
And so ways, like you spoke about before, we can do that. And again, create a routine that is great for you and works for you. But it's things like breath. I mean, me personally, just through my experience, I have learned that there is so much healing that happens in the breath.
Mhm.
Meditation as well, just sitting and being aware of what is coming up, or just giving yourself, like we said before, that pause,
Yeah.
that moment to look within. Mindfulness, being mindful of your thoughts, of your actions, using music to heal. That's another great way we can heal is through music, through vibration. We know when we hear that song that like lifts us up, our vibration
Yeah.
lifts, right? And that's what we're looking at. That's all part of healing is how can we move through our day and give ourselves that high vibrational, the parts of that that's really going to lift our nervous system up or bring it from that stress back down into that calm of every day. So whether it's, a lot of things that I give my clients is grounding outside. Do it for 2 minutes. Put your bare feet on the ground.
Yeah.
It's simple. There's simple things like that. You mentioned before talking to a loved one,
Mhm.
hugging a loved one or hugging yourself. I know this sounds so cringy. Like I'm with you. I hear you. Because if someone said this to me years ago, I would have been like,
Yeah.
yeah, no. But something as simple as just like a really nice, just
Yes,
something like this, whether we move
definitely.
with it or in that moment, like try it. Have the cringe moment, right? Give it a go though, and just see what you feel in that moment. And all of these things that we can swap out the scrolling on our phones, especially in the morning and at night.
Yeah.
A tasking that I quite often do is getting clients to take the breaths before they reach over and grab their phone, or at nighttime, instead of being on your phone in bed, sit, I guess not so much in the bedroom because we associate that with sleeping, but sit somewhere for 2 minutes and it's 2 minutes, put on some calming music and just take a few breaths and then hop into bed. These tiny, tiny changes can make a huge difference. And this is where we're talking about micro healing today, because it is really in the smallest ways that we can make those shifts. So, creating those moments of pause and those moments of love and gratitude to let our body know that we're safe and that we've got this and that it's all going to be okay. It's not about avoiding the dysregulation. It's learning and knowing how can we regulate, how can we calm time and time again throughout our day. And it's something that we have the choice to do. We can choose in these moments to take that breath, to ground, to have that stillness before we react. Knowing what it's doing to our own bodies and just being really in tune with what is my body telling me right now. Pre, do you have anything to add on nervous system
Yeah.
regulation?
And oh my God, the butterfly hug, the hugging of for oneself, like, oh, that I have to be honest. When I first heard about it, while I was studying for, in my coaching program, when I was made to do that, it was definitely cringy. I was like, oh my God, no, I'm not doing that. But as
Yeah.
often as I did, it felt really good. And I understand that, as humans, we don't want to go in front of the mirror and, talk to ourselves or like look into our eyes and like just be, or even like give ourselves the hug and everything. But try,
Yes.
just a request to anyone listening or watching this. We are requesting, try it once, try it a couple of times, try it for a few seconds, and you will feel the difference. And I love that you mentioned the fight, flight, or freeze response, that, when we kind of go if we are in the constant state of survival, we, I think we can't control every trigger, but we can support our nervous system in tiny ways. Some practical tips I think that I would like to, give out is try humming. I think even similar to
Ooh.
music. Um, I think just the sounds and I think that would work. Rocking gently, maybe sitting in a rocking chair and just being in the moment and gently rocking, splashing cool water on your face. I so believe in this. I love that. It makes you feel so good. Or placing a warm, hand over your belly or your heart or your chest. I think these work really well, in addition to what all you mentioned. And these micro-regulation tools send signals to, our body of safety, that saying that I'm okay, I'm here, in the present. And when the body feels safe, healing unfolds naturally.
Mm.
So, yeah, healing doesn't happen in isolation. Um, there are solo journeys we must take, definitely. Moments when we sit with our pain quietly, just us and our breath. And there's also that kind of healing that happens in the in between, in our connections. And that's where micro healing happens in relationships, in the way we show up for each other in small ways, in simple ways. It's not the big conversations or the dramatic gestures that always brings us closer. It's the eye contact that says, I see you. It's the hand that reaches out for yours during a hard moment. The simple how are you really, that text at the right time from a connection, a friend, an acquaintance. It's these little things that really matter and that tell our nervous system that you're safe, you matter. um, I guess these micro moments of care, they build trust, they create emotional safety, they remind us that we don't have to carry it all alone. And the thing about micro healing in relationships is often about the presence, not solutions. Like about being with or for someone, but not doing it for them. Sometimes it's remembering a small detail someone shared and, bringing it up. I remember, like, I know it would feel so good to, listen to something that I might have said in a conversation and someone might have picked it up and been like, "Oh, you mentioned that and how did that go?" Or I think it just it's such a beautiful thing to be thought of in that way. Making
Mm.
someone's favorite tea or a drink, leaving a voice note that says, I'm proud of you, saying, I love you in the quiet moments, not just the big ones. So we become
Mm.
vessels for healing when we hold space and when we see each other clearly and when we offer love in doses that feel honest and real. So if you're navigating a relationship, romantic, platonic, or familial, you're not sure how to support someone who's struggling, don't underestimate the power of small, loving acts. You don't have to be perfect. None of us are. You don't have to have the right words. A lot of us don't. Just be
Yep.
present, be kind, be human. Because sometimes the smallest gestures leave the biggest impact, the biggest
Yeah.
imprint. Mel, when we spoke last week about micro healing in relationships, you were so fascinated. And I remember it blew your mind. And I'm wondering, what have you thought about it?
Oh, yes. So I just absolutely love this topic. Like when you mentioned this last week, I was like, yes, we need to get this to the people because what I realized is that we have learnt these things and we have learnt these techniques that we do in our everyday now, and it becomes our lifestyle, right? Like, I don't even think about, oh, I'm doing breath work or I need to calm my system down. What am I doing? It's kind of like natural. And it kind of was this moment where I was like, hang on a minute, wait, we've got to put on the brakes and slow down and just bring it to everyone and be like, these are the tips these are the practical things you can do, and actually kind of like coming back to basics. because I think like we sort of sometimes take these things for granted or we just do them and it's just life. And it's like, well, I was so passionate about just bringing like this simple step by step and also like letting people know that, when people think about healing, it's like it's got to be this retreat in the forest and we have
Right.
ayahuasca and we do like a holotropic breath work, which I mean is great, but it doesn't have to be an event that you're going to. It doesn't have to be this grand thing. It
Exactly.
can just be the simple things you can do every day, and it's healing in your own way, which is super important. So I was so excited when you mentioned this, and just to be able to even just talk about the micro healing, because again, it might be the first time that people are hearing about
Yeah,
micro healing, and it's like it's a thing, right? We don't have to do everything in huge steps. We can do the simple things, not overwhelming ourselves, overwhelming our nervous system. So yeah, I'm just so excited to bring this today and just to let everyone know that it's simple, yes, but it's effective.
Mhm.
Whether you are healing with deep breaths or whether you're putting up these boundaries and protecting yourselves, whether it is giving yourself the cringy hug that you don't want to do, all these little things, they're tiny steps, but they're still steps, which is really important. Micro healing, even though it is micro, it's micro, it really is mighty. It can have a mighty effect and it really is healing. So I'd like to close with, until next time, like we sort of mentioned, be kind to yourself, be kind to your nervous system, be kind to others. Keep choosing you, even in the smallest way, and find the miracles in the everyday. If I can just give everyone that, find those beautiful things that are around us, become aware of them. Be kind, be gentle.
Yeah.
Sending big love to you all. Until next time.
And if you're waiting to feel whole again, don't wait for a big moment. Start with one small gesture, one small action. Let micro healing guide you back to yourself. One breath, one habit, one moment of love at a time. You are not broken, you are becoming. Until next time, bye.
Beautiful. Bye.